Good morning and welcome. It's almost 24 years ago that the free trade agreement between Chile and Canada came into force, and it is now that we are during the ninth free trade commission between both countries. We wanted to invite you to a very interesting initiative, which we have called Chile-Canada FTA, its impact in business generation and exchanges of good corporate practices. This instance has been organized by the Undersecretariat of Economic International Affairs, by the Canadian Embassy in Chile, and also the Chilean Canadian Chamber of Commerce and Pro Chile. This initiative is going to be really interesting. As I was commenting on, we are going to take a look at the best practices and also how this has helped us benefit economically and also even to grow culture-wise as well. And I'd like to give the floor to Pablo Herrera, Chair of the Chilean Canadian Chamber of Commerce. Pablo, how are you? And welcome. Thank you so much, Barbara. It's nice to meet you. And good morning, everyone. At the Chilean Canadian Chamber of Commerce, we are happy to be part of this event, where within the framework of the Ninth Commission of Free Trade between Chile and Canada, which is taking place together with SUBREI, the Canadian Embassy in Chile, and Pro Chile, this trust talk called the Free Trade Agreement between Chile and Canada, its impact in business generation and exchange of best corporate practices. I'd like to thank who are joining us today, the Deputy Minister of International Trade of Canada, John Hannaford, the Undersecretary of Economic International Affairs, Rodrigo Yañez. It was July the 5th in 1997 when the free trade agreement between Chile and Canada came into force, a treaty that has been modernized over time, incorporating, for example, a chapter about trade and gender, allowing us to look towards the future and be at the forefront of inclusive trade for the challenges of our time. Our chamber has been promoting for close to 30 years the progressive development of trade relationships between Chile and Canada and collaborating in order to improve the business opportunities for both countries. We're good partners with the particularities of each economy, some similarities and differences, allowing us to learn of each other and empower each other. The presence of Canada in Chile goes beyond just mining. It includes renewable energy, electricity distribution, natural gas, the forestry sector, the financial sector, infrastructure, aquaculture, engineering, health services, environmental services, technology, among others. Ever, ever since this bilateral agreement began, Canada has quadrupled its investment in Chile. In 2019, it already had an investment stock of around $34.5 billion, representing 27.9% of the Canadian investment in America and 12.6% of global foreign investment in our country, being the third most relevant foreign investor in Chile. And at the same time, Chile is the seventh largest foreign investor in Canada. We are two countries that rely on free trade, that foster international cooperation and are committed to multilateralism as a key factor for development and prosperity. International trade is a fundamental factor to provide dynamism to economies, generate jobs, exchange best practices, obtain innovation, and foster the development of both nations. The relationship between both countries goes beyond just economy and is also expressed in other areas such as inclusiveness, diversity, gender, sustainability, innovation, and also care for the environment. An example of this is the initiative called Trust, Generating Trust, which has been successfully undertaken by our chamber, contributing and fostering dialogue and highlighting Canada best practices in public, private, and social areas. As mentioned by the former General Governor of Canada, David Johnston, in his book Trust, 20 Ways to Build a Better Country, each of us can start strengthening trust and by means of our actions, contribute to a better country, a book which inspired this initiative. And in these times where Chile is starting a new path trust becomes a fundamental value. Chile is undergoing a historic period where, as a chamber, and recognizing the importance of this free trade agreement for the relationship between both countries, we hope this can be an example of the relevance of multilateral relationships and how foreign investment can contribute to our nations, not just in economic terms, but rather in social and cultural as well. And in this Chile that we are now starting to rethink. I'd like to thank each of you for your participation in this event, and I wish it can be as best as possible for today. Thank you so much, and back to you, Barbara. Thank you so much, Pablo. Thank you so much. In these times where we need so much development in these instances, such as trust, are going to be a huge source of support. Coming back to the topic we are here for today, we're going to be talking about trade and relationships between Chile and Canada, this free trade agreement, which, as I mentioned before, has brought multiple benefits for everyone. But precisely for deepening these benefits and also what this experience has been like, we are going to have the vision from both our country and also Canada as well. And for that, I'd like to give the floor to John Hannaford. He is the Deputy Minister of International Trade of Canada. How are you, John? Welcome.
I am very well. Thank you very much. And good afternoon. Bonjour, buenas tardes. I'd like to start by extending a special thank you to the Canada-Chile Chamber of Commerce for hosting this event. We greatly value the Chamber's tremendous work to help deepen our relationship and strengthen the commercial ties between Canada and Chile. I'm grateful for this opportunity to provide a few words on the strong partnership that exists between our countries, what I believe should be our common priorities over the next 5 years as we try to ensure an inclusive and sustainable post-COVID-19 economic recovery. But before we start discussing our priorities, we could benefit from a quick look at our past, where we are today, and how much we've achieved. As most of you know, the Canada-Chile Free Trade Agreement came into force in 1997, as Pablo mentioned. For Canada, this was our first free trade agreement with a country in Central or South America. Next year, we'll be celebrating 25 years since the agreement came into force. And over the years, our relationship has soared to new heights. In fact, bilateral merchandise trade between our two countries has more than tripled since our free trade agreement entered into force, to $2.6 billion last year. On average, bilateral trade flows between our two countries grew 12.2% faster than they would have in the absence of the FTA. The majority of trade gains came from new trade, products that were not traded prior to the FTA and for which the FTA reduced the entry threshold. The agreement has also helped create the right conditions for a much bigger Canadian investment presence in Chile. So much so that the stock of Canadian direct investment in Chile stood at $23.1 billion at the end of 2020, making Chile our top investment destination in South and Central America. Canada is the largest foreign investor in mining in Chile, and Canadian firms have important investments in the financial services, energy infrastructure, and aquaculture sectors. Likewise, Chilean investment in Canada is growing. In 2019, Canada was the 7th largest destination for Chilean investment abroad. As a testament to the importance of our trade relationship, our FTA has been broadened and modernized on several occasions since it first entered into force. As recently as 2017, we updated the chapters on investment and government procurement and added new chapters on trade and gender, sanitary and phytosanitary measures, and technical barriers to trade. In addition, just last month, Canada and Chile signed a memorandum of understanding to establish an intellectual property committee under the Free Trade Commission of the Canada-Chile FTA. We also negotiated together the CPTPP, which sets high standards for regional trade agreements. This agreement includes elimination of over 98% of tariffs and a variety of non-tariff measures that contain strong commitments on labor and environment to ensure that the CPTPP members do not derogate from their commitments in these areas in order to increase trade or investment. We're fully supportive of Chile's ongoing efforts to ratify the CPTPP, which we believe will be of strong benefit to Chilean businesses and create economic growth. Chile has not only been for Canada a key partner in advancing our shared commitment to a rules-based fair trading environment. Chile has also been a friend and an ally with whom we could advance the principles of inclusive trade. We know that not everyone within our countries has enjoyed the benefits of trade. This reality is only worsened with the COVID-19 pandemic, disproportionately impacting vulnerable groups such as SMEs, women, Indigenous peoples, and other racialized persons, further exacerbating existing barriers. Now more than ever, we need to do everything we can to ensure that the benefits of trade are more widely and equitably shared, including by pursuing inclusive approaches to trade that seek to ensure the benefits of these agreements for everyone, including traditionally underrepresented groups such as SMEs, women, LGBTQ2+, and Indigenous peoples. For example, encouraging women's participation in international trade and commerce has a twofold benefit. First, increased participation of the female workforce can lead to faster economic recovery for the world. And second, it could help minimize the extent of economic and social harm women might have suffered during this pandemic. Canada and Chile acknowledge the importance of applying a gender perspective to economic and trade issues to ensure that economic growth benefits everyone. And this is why our FTA was modernized in 2017 to include a trade and gender chapter. COVID-19 is perhaps the most challenging crisis of our generation, but is also an opportunity to rebuild stronger, to rebuild in a way that is more sustainable and inclusive. For Canada, our road to recovery can and indeed should prioritize clean technologies and green solutions that reduce our carbon footprint and enable sustainable growth. The role that trade can play in repairing the harm to the post-pandemic world and the work that we are doing to ensure that this is the case also needs to be better communicated to our citizens. Our ability to engage in international trade can only occur with domestic and international support, and that support will surely erode if people do not believe that trade works for them or do not understand how trade influences their everyday lives. Our citizens need to be convinced of the benefits of trade, and we need to work actively to dispel common myths and perceptions around what trade and trade agreements do. For example, we have worked hard over the years to address questions and concerns from Canadians in such areas as investor-state dispute settlement and intellectual property. We have also reinforced that trade and environmental sustainability are compatible, that trade provisions and FTAs help improve working conditions and living standards for workers, and that our FTAs do not prevent governments from regulating in the public interest or allowing foreign investors to break domestic law. We need to do more in the coming years to get these messages out to our citizens. This event serves as a platform to do just that. It's our collective responsibility to do so from both public and private sectors. I'd also like to say a few words about the importance we attach to supporting our small and medium-sized enterprises. In order to have an inclusive and sustainable post-COVID economic recovery, we need more companies to take advantage of the Canada-Chile FTA, especially SMEs. SMEs are the motor of our economics and lifeblood of our communities. In Canada, SMEs employ 90% of our private sector workforce. But for a number of reasons, only a small percentage of these businesses export. I hope this event will shed some light on how to overcome some of these challenges and inspire companies to take advantage of the CCFTA. For those Canadian companies participating today, remember that Canada's Trade Commissioner Service exists to help you succeed in foreign markets. If you're not already using their services, I highly encourage you to do so. If there's one point I want to leave you with today, it's that we need to leverage trade more than ever to help us grow out of the current COVID context. The Canada-Chile FTA is a key catalyst that will enable a resilient, sustainable, and inclusive economic recovery and longer-term prosperity. Thank you, and I'm wishing you all a very fruitful discussion. Muchas gracias.
Muchas gracias, John.
Thank you so much, John. Very interesting, especially about how we have been adapting over time. So always a flexibility, trying to maximize the best outcomes, thinking about the pandemic. We are going to need these relationships more than ever. Thank you so much, John, for joining us. Okay, to know about the vision from our country, from Chile, we'd like to welcome Rodrigo Yáñez, Undersecretary of Foreign International Affairs. How are you, Rodrigo, and welcome. Hi, Barbara. Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here with all of you. Same. So tell us about your experience from our country. Okay, so first of all, aside from thanking the Deputy Minister John Hannaford and also Ambassador Ward for being here, along with our ambassador in Canada, Raul Fernandez, and also those who are joining us today, I'd like to remind you that it's been 80 years of diplomatic relations between both countries, and that we are located in different borders of the world with very complementary economies, and which has allowed for a very harmonious development in the last few decades. And from that perspective, we believe that Chile and Canada, from this free trade agreement signed in 1996, almost 25 years ago, it set a milestone for us. It was the first agreement of its kind signed by Chile with a developed economy. And under this scheme, which has new chapters about the services, regional rules, customs procedures, service investments, among others, this relationship with Canada has flourished to become one of the most important ones for the world. For our country, and just in the past, Chile has had substantial investments coming from Canada in industries such as services and mining, positioning the country as the secondary. And on the other hand, this association has allowed us to be part of important international processes, such as the development of the Trans-Pacific Partnership of Economic Cooperation, and subsequently, so the Trans-Pacific Cooperation. Now, we have looked for also proposing ideas and so on for the WTO. In this context, Chile and Canada have been important allies and also looking to foster the multilateral trading system focused on clear rules, favoring stability and growth. Nevertheless, this is just a snapshot of what our countries can achieve in the future. In the upcoming few years are full of challenges, but as always, opportunities as well. And as you all know, and also set by the COVID-19 health crisis and international trade, which is always parallel. And this was not the exception this time. Bottlenecks, restrictions, and tariffs were also part of all of this. Fortunately, instead of using malpractices like many other actors around the world, both Chile and Canada were up to the challenge, where some raised barriers, and then we focused on taking them down. Where clear rules were absent, we become more transparent than ever. Thanks to this drive, this sacrifice, this trade agreement exchange between Chile and Canada grew in 2020 by 1%. A modest figure, but considering the consequences of this pandemic, this is great news. And with this, we can learn that under clear rules and open economy, we can be able to achieve progress even in the most difficult circumstances. The post-pandemic recovery shall be, for the most part, framed by international trade. In 2020, exports and imports made up more than 55% of the Chilean and Canadian GDP. As a consequence, the first challenge to achieve is for the long path of overcoming the impacts of COVID-19 to double down on our efforts to deepen and strengthen our joint work so far. Chile and Canada are great partners and have multiple commonalities and a common view about the benefits of multilateralism and globalization. That's why I am sure that in the upcoming years, this situation will continue bearing fruit. An example of this is the MOU, or Memorandum of Understanding, on Intellectual Property, recently signed with Minister Mary Ian of Canada. This text is a consolidation of cooperation in these matters as a fundamental element for the development of this new economy, taking us to the important challenge which we face together with Canada in the upcoming years. The global economy is in a process of being restructured, where the main trends of the 2000s, mainly led by the internationalization of value chains, are moving towards knowledge-based economy. In this context, Chile is not the exception, where we are in a constant diversification process for our exporting matrix, and also to develop and include more elements related to digital trade and services. And also Canada has lots to contribute. So hopefully we can contribute to empower each other. But digital transformation is the only change, is not the only change in the economy of tomorrow. Safeguarding the environment has also become one of the main pillars for this. Canada and Chile have a long-standing trajectory of environmental cooperation. That's why we believe there is much room for understanding in these factors, even more taking into consideration the technological development that we have reached in aspects such as green mining and so on. In the next years, there are going to be many different challenges, from the post-pandemic recovery, strengthening of multilateralism, to cooperation to adapt our economies to the changes of tomorrow. In one way or the other, I have no doubt that the relationship between Canada and Chile is going to be stronger, and once again, the agreements and benefits will flourish. Thank you so much, and I wish you the best. Thank you so much, Undersecretary, for your words. It is more than clear, as you said, that today more than ever, we do need to continue working together to face all these challenges that are going to be with us for so long. Thank you so much for joining us.
Justamente para aterrizar.
And to land the ideas, to go to specific cases, we'd like to go to the case of productivity improvements, how we can seize free trade agreements, specifically the FTA with Canada. We want to talk with representatives from different industries. They've all been quite successful in their fields, and I'd like to introduce a great panel. I will start by greeting Karina Bompar, CEO of Empresas Agrotop. Karina, how are you? Welcome. Thank you very much, Barbara. It's a pleasure to be here present to see what new things we can learn and contribute to be able to improve or increase trade between Chile and Canada. I'm sure that experience will be quite enriching for everyone that is looking and watching today. We're with Claudio Sanchez, General Manager of Cobra Technologies. How are you? Hi, hello. Thank you very much for this instance, for the participation. It's a very interesting topic, and it's critical nowadays in the world we're living post-pandemic, and we need different tools to reactivate economies. So thank you very much for inviting me, and I hope I can really and truly contribute to this. Yes, we're sure you can do so. And we're also together with Daniel Undurraga, CEO of Corner Shop. How are you, Daniel? I'm great. Thank you very much for the invitation. Now we'll get much from this experience we obtained and reap the benefits. We're together with Francisco Braco SK Goenius. How are you, Francisco? Fernando. Yes, great. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you very much. We've introduced everyone, and in order to start, we'll start from the general experiences based on the different fields that you each represent. What has been the role? What has been the importance of truly having free trade agreements? And we'll go specifically deep into the work that you've been able to do with Canada. Karina, the floor is yours. I'm an agro engineer, and we're in the south of Chile, agriculture engineer. We dedicate to wrap seeds of lupine, maize, and oat. And we have the main purchasers of grains in the south of Chile. And I personally am quite related with Canada. I did study in Canada. I did many internships in Canada, and I can truly say that what is beautiful between these two countries, Chile and Canada, is that we have quite complementary agriculture. And the agriculture from Canada is an extensive agriculture of large surfaces, but Chilean agriculture is quite more intensive with a small surface and throughputs that are much higher than Canada's. That is why complementing each other, and this that we get between both countries in this agricultural sector, it's quite impressive how each country complements each other. Despite the fact we have similar crops and fields, both countries can truly add value to the other's markets. So I believe that this FTA has really and truly added much value. We'll be able to increase the trading of both seeds and grains in the last years. It is very interesting to truly go into the experience. As you say, there are many things that are similar. One, of course, can see this as a competition, but you can just add value to each other, and you've been able to seize the benefits and reap the benefits. So, Claudia, how has your experience worked out? Well, I'm Claudia Sanchez, General Manager of Cobra Technologies. It is a company that it's called the Common Capitals in Canada. We provide services to large mining in Chile, concentrated in large mining haulings such as Codelco, VHP, Sol Mineras, and for us it is critical. We have within our business unit, we import great large spare parts, and we have them weekly, and they're exempt from tariffs because of the FTA, and that of course lets us be more competitive and to be able to expand and diversify and to expand our market share in our segment. On the other hand, inside our company and within our company, we automate processes and optimize them with robotics and high technologies. So the internation of capital goods, thanks to FTAs, then we now have preferred fees, which of course, and tariffs, which lets us be much more competitive in the implementation of these services. And we are able to get more tenders, be awarded more tenders in this line that is very modern in mining. But we have achieved this, and we have been able to be more competitive. So it's very important for us between our core business to truly have these preferent taxes. Thank you very much, Claudia. What about your case, Daniel? You've had to go and extend to the rest of the world. We've seen this almost live, moment after moment, looking for capitalization funds. What has been this experience? What has this experience been for you? Well, I work in Corner Shop, which is a delivery service from supermarkets and e-commerce in general. It is a company that emerged in Chile 6 years ago, and we're operating in Canada and in 10 different cities now for 3 years it's been. And the truth is we're doing great, and we have many partners there in Canada. We're working with many supermarkets, many shops, grocery stores, and we've done great, really. We're quite happy. Yes, thank you very much, and we'll go deep into your experience later on. And finally, Fernando, just to know a bit more about you, your experience, please. The floor is yours. Well, first of all, I'm the founder and manager of Noelios, which is a company that is technological roots. And there's a group that invested in us. We're partners with them, and they're cornerstone to truly understand the nature of what Helios is exactly. Now, we develop and we provide services of high technology. The fourth industrial evolution is at the core of our activities, specifically the remote operations, that factor. Canada and Chile, among many other affairs or topics they have in common, they have in mining a truly important and curious complementarity. They're both of the countries that it's easy to identify as countries that have a protagonist role in mining, and most of the applications we have automation, robotics, and Velios really develops all these. And then we are both in Canada and Chile. We have branches in Sudbury in the mining part in the north of Ontario, and of course in Chile, where Noelios really originated, both in Santiago and Calama. The complementarity between or slash competition with Canada, it's quite virtuous. It is in the field that we move in. It's intensely permeated by the world of by the academic world and the world of companies. Most of our activity is quite linked to universities, some of the large Canadian universities, in fact. Thank you very much, Fernando. Karina, out of what you mentioned before, Fernando's also mentioning that not only are we speaking about a commercial or trade relationship, but the fact that this goes beyond this. There's different ways of working and development of businesses that are quite shared between both countries. What have you learned that we've been able to adopt from the things that are being carried out in Canada? As I mentioned before, Barbara, what happens, and as Fernando also mentioned, in agriculture, what happens is that, at least in our area, which is to the south of Chile, we sow the same crops that in Canada: raps, wheat, oat, legumes, many others. with the difference that in Canada you have thousands of hectares, and in Chile we only have, between all the different harvests and crops, 800,000 hectares. So we are quite intensive, farm intensive, and the difference with our agriculture is that agriculture is a very high throughput and few surface, and the market has led us to Chile creating or having many of these crops as places to produce seeds. It's like when saying, for example, I have an orchard, and where I have the best dirt or land, I will sow my seeds, and maybe I have some others where I don't get irrigation. So this has happened in some countries where Chile is a great producer of seeds for Canada, but on the other hand, Canada starts being like an importer of seeds from Chile, different types of seeds. But on the other hand, Chile does not have enough surface to comply with all of the grain requirements that we need, both for salmon cultures or wheat, legumes, lentils themselves. It's just we don't have surfaces anymore for this lower land, enough land, because we produce fruit and wine in Chile. So it makes sense to bring that kind of thing from there. Unfortunately, we have great weather. We have a combination of a soil climate that leads us to levels of throughput that you say, for example, in the oat, in Canada you produce maybe 2.5, and in Chile we reach 7 to 10% or 12% of levels of productivity that are much higher, because of course we are a climate or weather that's more maritime, and Canada has a more continental weather, and it is affected by the air currents, continental air currents. And I did have to work in the 90s in Canada. I went and did an internship as a student. I remember I was a Tuesday harvesting crops and just different cultures, crops. And then on Wednesday, there was snowfall. On Thursday, it rained, and then we had the crops reap benefits again on Friday. So that doesn't happen in Chile because we have a more stable and climate, and weather. So as I said, they both complement each other. It's complementary. Traditionally, we have many Canadians working in Chile, many Chileans working in Canada, and this complementarity, agricultural complementarity. And what do you think they learn from us? What do they learn from us? Well, we have great barbecues, for example. Yes, we're talking about important things, right? We also dance great, we sing. No, as I told you before, the intensity of agriculture here is much larger than there. So we have many farmers that come from Canada in January, and then they observe material here, and they fly from Canada. They observe the material here in Chile, etc. I'm just talking about the agricultural sector, of course. Yes, in that field at least, yes. But Claudia, what is your experience? What has it been like? All these practices, all these things you can learn. How have the exchanges been? It's quite interesting. Our headquarters are in Toronto, and it's a multinational that has worked for more than 45 years in the market, with presence in China and Germany. And the truth is that what this lets us, or different engineering units, to use and put the improvements in different fields at a cross-cutting level in mining. So these good practices of technologies, ideas, innovation, and engineering clearly help to, as Chilean customers, it helps to be more efficient, and it helps us project and foresee different strategies and alternatives that have happened in other mining sectors. For example, mining in South Africa, that's very important in Canada and North America. And in Chile, everyone knows that Chile, given its copper grades, needs to be more and more efficient all the time regarding production and regarding cost. Therefore, it is very important to be able to convey all this engineering skills and improvements to the optimization processes. And this nowadays adds a lot of value for the production of Chilean copper. So it's very important. In terms of our services, the capacity of developing innovation, how are we doing in Chile if we compare ourselves with Canada? It has improved a lot in these last years because of what I just told you. Nowadays, in each holding wants to be more and more efficient. The truth is, if we have a type of change that's really favoring us, we have a copper price that's very interesting as well. We have to remember that copper grades are much lower now. So nowadays, to truly extract a ton of copper, it's it costs us much more than before. And a very important item, which is that we have to put people over the processes, and large mining companies nowadays have really have extracted people from the line of fire, and they've been able to reduce accidents, and they've automated processes, and they've injected different pure engineer models that lets us reduce levels of accident or accidentability almost to zero with all these types of linear automated processes. Therefore, nowadays, this is very interesting because at the end of the day, you add value to the production process, and that we have to put people on top of the processes, over the processes, and I believe that is very important. So it's important not only that this provides more profitability, but we protect the life of the workers, right? Yes, security is a value or safety, and that goes along with what mining is now seeing as a priority, of course, in a cross-cutting manner, and that helps a lot for the interpretation of this engineering and what we can share here from our headquarters. Yes, it's a very objective indicator, so we can measure that, of course, they have improved considerably or significantly. So, Daniel, in your case, and traveling around the world, how has your company evolved? What is your experience? What can you share with us? We have a service which is quite generic in general, so it's quite similar. What we do in Chile is quite similar with what we do in Canada, and I believe that one of the opportunities we have for the Canadian companies regarding Chilean technologies is the cost of the engineers in Chile is much lower than Canada, but quality is the same or it's very close. So depending on the industry, maybe it's a bit less, but generally in terms of IT applications, consumer internet, etc., I'd say that the quality is good, and there's a great opportunity there to for Canadian companies to develop their softwares in Chile. Now, let's go a step prior to that. What have you seen that cornership has that has allowed you to transform into the unicorn company that we're quite pleased with? What's the differentiation or the factors that have let you grow not only in Chile but in the rest of the world? Well, I believe that for a company to do great, we need to offer a service that people want to use. And we have a service that is quite massive because we mainly offer grocery shops to households, which is a need that is quite universal. Everyone goes to the supermarket. So I believe that's the most important part. And to be able to compete at an international level, what we have to do is to have a service that lets you have international standards and that people think it's great regardless of where it's coming from. So we started this company thinking about making it world class with a world class service, for it to work great, for us to have great customer support, to be on time, and paying attention to small details for the service to be consistent all the time. I believe that's the most important thing. That doesn't sound that complicated, but to put that into practice, I mean, that's hard, because if not, it would be quite easy to replicate. Many people have tried, but have not been able to do so, to do something similar in the same quality of service, for it to be as massive as Corner Shop, you know? Yes, I believe that it has to do with the fact that the quality of services in Latin America is not that good, historically speaking. Companies do not respond fast, do not respond good in general. So that makes a company that starts in Chile maybe being able to expand to Peru or other Latin American countries where people are used to more mediocre services. But to the extent services are good and they are appropriate to the standards, international standards, which are quite similar just everywhere across country. I believe it's something that we can implement and do. What we just need to do is to raise the bar on how we respond to a customer. How much time do we have to should we take to answer how terrible it is to be late with a delivery? If all Chilean companies suffer as much as I suffer when there's a delivery that is late, I mean, maybe they'd all be great as well. It's not, what we do is not that much rocket science. It's just to do things great, treating customers well and paying attention to details. Thank you very much. We'll go deeper into this experience. It's a proud experience for Chile Corner Shop. Fernando, what is your experience? What has it been like? There's many things we have in common with Canada, so what is, the floor is yours. I believe that the relationship between Chile and Canada has reciprocal feedback, specifically in the mining sector. It's not the only sector, but it is a sector to such extent that makes it quite specific in particular. And Canada has a tradition in the development of technologies, which is very important. They have in Ottawa some centers, the Coconata. We have a historical relationship with them, and we have a business relationship that is great, because many of us that founded Noelius, we had that link from before, and it is a group that is truly, it is the Canadian Silicon Valley in many senses. We also have the corridor between Toronto and Waterloo, and we have many centers there that are very, very important, with whom we have these links. Queen's University in Kingston, the same happens on the side of the Pacific, so that is so important. Now the reference, I'm making this reference because in almost all the examples, there's a Chilean counterpart that is perfectly competent, with whom this feedback, interdependence that is reciprocal is generated. It's hard to respond where effectively, or where we truly have, where the main intellectual capital is truly created. I'd say that in both countries it's been quite fluid. And I imagine that it's probably very interesting for you to see how Chile is positioning the world with products and services of quality that we truly don't know how to distinguish where they emerge from. The nature of the issue is global. I said in the beginning, a core of what Delirious does is to make remote extraction or remote operation of machines, of robots, of vehicles, to make this feasible. And if we think about it, in a couple more years, this will be quite more, it'll be secondary. It won't matter that much where the operator is, physically speaking. And mining, it's quite obvious. It's you're in remote, geographic, hostile places, and the quality of life of people, the environment, of course, is, you mentioned before that it is a key element now, and now not depending on the physical site or where we have to be, it seems like it's key for the prognosis of what is going to happen in the next years to come. And in that regard, does that pandemic accelerate everything much more, thinking that we, in the case, not only do we have to think in the case of mining that the sites are safer to replace some type of work, to be able to do remotely some things, but practically we're all working from our homes now. So I imagine this must accelerate some processes that were thought of for a couple more years, right? Yes, undoubtedly, from the technological point of view, we're continuing with the same curve, but from the point of view of culture and the capacity of adoption or the willingness to form this, there's an evident acceleration. I believe that the same conversation is a translation of that change, of the natural nature with which we don't have to be physically present in the site, right? Yes, it's important how we've been able to adapt. Maybe if they asked us this a couple years ago, we maybe wouldn't have had these answers. So yes, it has its reasonable side, and it's something that we might have not adopted yet, right? Yes, we truly didn't have any more options. We had to really go along with it. Now I'd like to ask something to all of you speakers, because I've spoken about some examples. In your cases, they've been quite successful, but how hard is it for Chilean companies to be able to have global participation to enter the Canadian market, complying with all the demands what that market demands from us? It's a very important market. Karina. In the agricultural world, between agriculture engineers, we're working very good. So I'd say it's not something that it's too complicated. And as I previously mentioned, it's quite complementary. So when we have a complementary interest, we export seeds, as I mentioned, and we import vessels and ships, entire vessels of grains. Last year, we had one from canola. We had oat. There's some others that are bringing lentils, and in the same way, we're also exporting to Canada. So the truth is, as I said before, as Fernando said before, they complement, both countries complement each other, and it's very natural to generate long-standing friendships, really. And it's almost something that is familiar for us now. We, in summer, we in Chile were great for barbecue. So we do have a canola barbecue. That is what we call it now. We have 70 agricultural engineers that come from one side or the other, and we share experiences, not only to be related to business. So we start generating friendships and ways of living. As I commented before, it's something that is very easy. It's underrated, the importance of a good barbecue, truly, for doing great business, right? It is something that we know, and we did great together with Chileans. It's something that we know how to do in the south of Chile. Yes, we do it quite well.
Botas en el barro, un poco diferente el approach.
It's a different approach, right? Yes, with great Chilean wines, I mean, that is important as well. Yes, Chilean fruit, yes, of course. Claudia, how easy or hard is it for Chilean companies to go into the Canadian market? Well, the truth is that I agree with what Fernando and Karina recently mentioned. We also have to add that Chile has a quality that helps us. Of course, we have a coast, marine coast, that really puts us in our place and that orders our ports, and it helps us much more with exports and imports at a macro level, given the type of industry. So I believe that we as Chileans, we have raised the bar really to international fulfillment. We've been able to export to any part of the world, either Canada or others. We've evolved as an industry, and I believe that, as all the others just mentioned, it's easy to export technologies from here, or goods or services. And the truth is that we are able to align nowadays, and we get add value from both parties, both countries. What about your case, Daniel?
No, Canadá es un país bastante fácil de hacer
Canada
negocios.
is a country where it's quite easy to make business. It brings you a lot of hospitality to foreign investors and foreign investors in general. So I believe that it's quite easy to open a company there and to launch a service. Of course, we need to get familiar with all the meetings, all the standards that we need to have there to operate correctly. But for us, it was quite easy, relatively easy, easier than for the rest of the countries in Latin America. And in general, I believe that what is hard about entering the Canadian market is that it is a bit more competitive, at least in terms of services, which is what we do. And that's why we have to provide a service of excellence to truly stay in the market. A thing is to launch a service, but another thing is to do good and for the company to be profitable,
Pero en general,
etc.
fue bastante fácil.
But it was quite easy for us, just to sum up. Fernando, how do you see this? It's a very similar perception for me. Yes, I believe that hospitality is a word that truly reflects the nature of Canada. Coming from the institutional side to Canada, it's simple. from the point of view of business insertion. I believe it depends on each sector in terms of technology. The ecosystem has richness and density that is enormous, and there's a very cosmopolitan city that is truly willing to bet for your company. And Canada is one of the places in the world where it's very easy to incorporate business with them. So if you've had good experiences in general, you mentioned that it's easy to enter the Canadian market, but how much of that could you relate to the free trade agreement, to all these managements that you've done as a country that have let you truly open these markets? Would it be different if we didn't have these FTAs? The road for everyone that wants to really go into Canada, I mean, what would you tell them? I'd like to highlight what Fernando mentioned before, is that Canada is a country of immigrants. So it is a country that is very open. It doesn't happen in other parts of the world. That level of openness to different cultures. So that makes it very interesting as well. Now, the FTA, I believe it is the basis, it is the foundation to see what we're doing now. We Chileans, we are quite used to this because we are the country that more FTAs has in the entire world. So we're used to this being something that is normal, but sometimes it is not that normal. So we need, in almost all countries, our group Agrotop exports to 20 different countries, and in general, in all countries, we have very good relationships. So I believe we can be happy and pleased to have this level of openness. And of course, the FTA is from which point you start really generating all these relationships that we're engaged in. We're very used to having our foreign trade very developed. We have many FTAs, and maybe we'll lose focus on how important things are. What do you think, Claudia? Yes, I think it's critical. We have our headquarters in Canada, but the main company between the holding is here in Chile, and it is the largest and the most important one. And one of the reasons of this is the FTA, and that helps investment from Canada to Chile truly be justified and for it to continue growing. Undoubtedly, it is critical. So I believe that without that, the story would be much different. So from my point of view, that is key. What do you think, Daniel, about the importance of FTAs? We're now in moments of elections. We'll talk about that later on. Thinking about the importance of that. Some FTAs might have to be looked at for beyond. So what do you think about this? In our case, I don't believe it was that relevant because we simply went to Canada, we assembled a company there, and we started operating. Therefore, in our case, I think it wasn't that important because we offer a service and we offered it present from Canada with Chilean technology, but we're there present, we have people. So in general, I believe that FTAs are very important. They bring us many benefits and even more for trade, or exporting goods more than services, or services that are provided from Chile to Canada. But yes, in general, I believe that's important. Now, I agree with what is mentioned, and I think that treaty has a basal value. The agreements, they have clear rules of the game that have worked for decades now, and they also have an intangible value, and they generate trust, reliability. It's very hard to measure this, but it's very important. It is worth noting that in the area of services, engineering, and specifically these services whose regulation in terms of historical progression and regulation, since this is very recent, the framework of the FTA collaborates to be updated with daily matters. So I believe that what we do in robotics and operations is this, and it makes us the frontiers and barriers really disappear. So it's important to have all of this. Now think about what is coming next, the current scenario, because we've spoken about what you've been able to develop, how you've been able to generate this link for a long time, but we're in moments of uncertainty. We have a constituent process that is coming. We have the presidential elections that are coming here, the elections of the Congress. How do you see this political scenario that we're living in with the results that we saw and on the primary elections for president for this end of the year? What is your perspective? What is the expansion for your own businesses for this year, and also for a long term, medium term? I believe that others can answer first, okay?
¿Cómo ven ustedes el escenario? ¿Hay preocupación, hay inquietud, hay confianza?
Do you have any concerns, questions? Are you feeling confident? This is just my personal appreciation. I believe that this makes Chile transcend, and there's something that goes beyond Chile, which has to do with this stage of development of global society, where it's very hard to imagine that the result, whichever it is, of this constituent process continues in the years to come, and for it to not to incorporate these features of society that we're living in, and specifically of the interdependence between different ends of the world as part of the traits with which this will be processed in the future. Having said this, I'm quite optimistic. So, however this is processed, this will be to have consensus, just as the one we've lived in the many years of Chilean society. Daniel, how do you see all these changes proposed? In your case, you could maybe, this could maybe benefit you or harm you. How do you see this?
Bueno, la verdad es que uno como emprendedor siempre tiene...
As an entrepreneur, you always have to deal with what is unexpected, with things that happen sometimes, with pandemics or social unrest or whatever it is that life brings at you, or destination or destiny, sorry, brings at you. So I believe that as an entrepreneur, you're always prepared to deal with the chaos. I don't know if the best way possible, but we are prepared for that purpose.
Exactamente. Es parte de la vida.
It's part of life. Yes, it is part of life. And as an entrepreneur, you have to know how to go with the flow with everything that is happening. And in general, regarding the elections, I believe that our results and outcomes were quite good. For the both center candidates to have won, it means that the country is not polarized as we believed, and for the younger candidates to truly be the ones that won, that was great for me in terms of decision making. So I believe that in general, we're doing good and as an entrepreneur, you're also an optimistic, but yes, I am quite optimistic. So you have to battle day after day with all the different difficulties of business, right? To see if you can fulfill requirements or not. But in addition, you need some types of rules and for changes not to be that fast, right? For you to be able to project to or foresee for the medium and long term. Yes, that's what happened on Sunday, that the more center wing candidates, they won, and that shows that people look for changes, but not for radical changes or changes from one day to the other, but they look for easygoing changes and new leaderships and young leaderships, and I believe that is important. Claudia? I believe that Chile, for a long time now, has been characterized for having a social stability, political stability, therefore maintaining that and being able to prosper for the future, I believe can bring much more tranquility for foreign investment. Therefore, I think it puts the elections that we had on Sunday puts us at ease from that perspective. But on the other hand, we be quite thankful and acknowledge that despite the pandemic, the mining field did not stop, because then there was an ongoing nature of it, continuity, which was spectacular regarding other types of industries. Therefore, we do have to value efficiency at a country level regarding other sectors and other countries in the world. So we're seeing the micro perspective, mining, macro, and country perspective. I believe it's important to value political stability and operational stability, and then country stability, and how that can impact, not to leave decisions stagnant here. We need a Chile that is autonomous for an investment. So I believe it's encouraging to have a scenario that is more central, more stable, and not that radical. Karina, the floor is yours. Well, the good thing about when you don't start a conversation is that you can share the values with others. I am an entrepreneur. I do value with Dani, and as entrepreneurs, we're chameleons. We adapt to the situation. So for me, I've always been quite positive, and I tend to think that sometimes things change and everything will change and everything will adapt. And in that regard, I believe that more than seeing this as a risk, as many people were quite concerned, of course, there are opportunities. We have the opportunities that we can write and draft a great constitution, the opportunity of new faces to appear, the opportunity that Chile is going to go and follow its political process, since it is one of the most stable countries, and I fully share this point. So we have to see this from the side of optimism, and hopefully in 10 more years, we have a country that is much more incredible than the Chile that we have nowadays. So that's it. Now to conclude, since we are in a period of many changes and we will have many different visions, of course, if we put your proposals over the table, but what have you seen in your work with Canada, which you believe it's great for us to try to import, or some types of practices that they have in Canada, some policies? What do you think has worked great and that could potentially work in Chile? I don't know if any of you can think of any right now. In the agricultural world, what I'd like to highlight a lot from Canada, what I love about them and how they work, is that in general, it is a system that it's non-hierarchical, and it's quite focused on people. The people are at the core. There's a lot to learn. The operator is sort of a manager. He's also, or she is, a boss. We don't have to have this thing that is much more horizontal. It's a bit more Spaniard, and it comes from everyone. It just has a responsibility in the chain and what they have to do, and it's not for the boss, that for everyone to be more horizontal. That mentality, not for the boss to just be responsible. So lowering the responsibility and sharing with the operator, but whoever is right next to you, and not leaving the decision up to a supervisor or a supervisor of the supervisor. I believe that we need to work on that, and we've tried to copy many of those things from Canada. We've imported many practices because they have a work system that is quite dynamic and, yes, quite Anglo-Saxon. Claudia, you wanted to mention something. Something that I love from the Canadian culture is, and we're about to apply, we have recently applied in our country, in Chile, is that we have to believe in people according to their competences without worrying about if he or she, female, or without worrying about age. You have Canada has leadership now for a long time, and of course, in a Chilean company, it was very hard to have executives, female executives. So I did have the opportunity and I've been working in this company, general manager. I've been here for 6 years in this company. I've worked 18 years with them. I've been the manager for 6. So I don't know if that had been if I were in a Chilean company. So the opportunity of really giving spaces for everyone to believe in you, depending on diversity, depending on age, and the idea that they believe in people is great. And I do share with what Karina just mentioned, that organizational structure in the end, they're so flat, and that makes polyfunctionality work, but that also generates a sense of belonging, and that identity that you feel in the end, it bears fruits and it adds value. So it is something that, yes, it is worth noting. And leaving our prejudices aside, right? Fernando, some words for concluding what we can bring from the Canadian experience. I'd say that this global head, really, from this, we have a small company that emerges in Canada and that is born in the rest of the world. And it is related to with what Nodelio has done, but it emerges with different subjects without limits. If there's a small robotics unit that is going to be displaced or implemented in an underground mine site, it is the same that will probably go to the moon in the next orbital mission, and those barriers, they're not damaged. So the interrelationship between the world of research and the scholars and the entrepreneurial world with a global head, that is a feature that I would truly love to, for it to flow a bit more, not only in Chile, but in general. Daniel, floor is yours. I think everything has been mentioned. In general, I believe that Canadian culture is more horizontal. It is easier to assemble a company of excellence with a culture such as the Canadian culture. Really a bit more than Latin American culture, where, as Karina mentioned, everything is a bit more vertical and hierarchical. And people are immobilized without doing anything because they're waiting for the boss to tell them what they have to do. And the boss has a larger office with a larger room, etc. So that I believe that culture where everyone can contribute and everyone can participate with their opinion to build better services and better products, that of course ends up in us having better services and products. And I believe that is something that we can copy from the Canadian perspective. And regarding what Fernando mentioned, I think it is very important. One of the main reasons why I believe there's no more Chilean companies that have customers in Hong Kong or in Sweden or in Moscow or in Israel is because people simply do not imagine this. They don't think about this because the company, when it started, it wasn't thinking about that. It was thinking about how I make my company large in Santiago, and then when I'm small in Santiago, I'll go to Lima, and then in Lima, I'll go and I'll reach my goal. And on the other hand, in the North American culture in Canada and in the US, you see that entrepreneurs are always thinking about a global perspective. And there's no reason why Chile can't do this, I think, because Israel is a country that has 4 or 5 million people. Sweden has 9 million people. It is countries that have global companies and with services, with products that are sold everywhere in Japan and in the US and in Canada. So I think we could copy something from that, from those cultures, and get our inspiration from there when we venture and start new things. Yes, it's a bit more cultural, you say, right? More than restrictions or barriers. So we'll have to continue working. We have maybe training that can maybe let us look at the world beyond our eyes. So thank you very much to all our speakers for accompanying us today. We had a very interesting conversation and inspiring conversation. Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you. Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure. Have a great day, everyone. Thank you very much to those of you accompanying us today in this conversation, looking at everything that is important and the relevance of free trade agreements with Chile and Canada. We hope you have a great day, and thank you very much for accompanying us.